I'm Erin Hannes. I'm the Curator of Academic Engagement here at Sheldon, and I'm going to say a few words before I turn things over to Professor Kwame Dawes to say more about the program and get us started. But starting, I want to extend several notes of appreciation. First, to all of our sponsors, including Hickson Lead Endowment, who make our exhibitions and programs possible. Thank you also to Professor Kwame Dawes for regularly bringing students to Sheldon to engage in creative dialogue with art in the galleries, and for your support and enthusiasm in organizing this event this evening. Many thanks also especially to Trifina Yaboa for helping finalize logistics, and yes. And of course, thank you all to the graduate student poets who are here this evening. And again, thank you to everyone for being here in support of these really wonderful poets. I'm really excited to hear what you've written. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Dawes. Kwame Dawes is the author of numerous books of poetry and other books of fiction, criticism, and essays. His most recent collection, Unhistory, was co-written with John Kinsella and published by People Tree Press in 2022. He is the George W. Holmes University Professor of English and the Glenna Luschei, which I'm sure I just mispronounced, editor of Prairie, Schooner. Professor Dawes teaches in the Pacific MFA program and is the series editor of the African Poetry Book Series, director of the African Poetry Book Fund, and artistic director of the Calabash International Literary Festival. He is a chancellor for the Academy of American Poets and a fellow of the Royal Society of Literature. Editor of American Life and Poetry, Professor Dawes is the winner of the prestigious Wyndham Campbell Award for Poetry and was a finalist for the 2022 Neustadt International Prize for Literature. Professor Dawes.
Thank you. Thanks, Erin. Welcome to all of you. I told the class today that it was going to be fine because it's a big class. So if you all didn't show up, it'll be all right. They could listen to each other's reading. This is a fantastic museum. You know, the Sheldon is a fantastic museum, and my daily rituals, I will come and just hang out in the gallery, and I found it very, very exciting. I found so many great poems that I've written, poems that are great to me anyway, here in this gallery. It's a complicated history, of course. You know, this museum is designed by an architect who's kind of problematic, but it's a beautiful space. Isn't that the way with art? I tell you. But what is really exciting is that each of these galleries rotate interesting work all the time, and so the students, you know, these folks who are here, who are poets in their own right, we came here and people have written poems based on it. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to move from gallery to gallery. We're going to move through 3 galleries. And what will happen is, you know, once you get into the gallery, it'll be a little crowded. So I just ask you to be real quiet. The poets then will go in front of the piece of art that they've responded to, they are in dialogue with. They'll read their poems to thunderous applause. And and then we'll move on. You've got the program, so you can see that how many poems will be read in which gallery and so on and so forth. So all I would ask us to do is to move as if we are in a sacred space until we get back out here and we can make all the noise and so on and so forth as possible. All right? There'll be a brief technical switch when each poet will be reading with a lapel mic, and so we'll have to switch the mics. So that'll be the time when you can talk amongst yourselves. And then we'll continue as it goes along. So I really want to thank Erin for being so enthusiastic about this partnership. And thank you, I mean it when I say thank you all for showing up. I think it's great. And I think you'll thank the poets themselves, because I think they're doing a fantastic job. They have some great poems. Okay, so thank you, and I'll say we'll start over in that gallery over there, right?
I'm Kimberly Reyes. I'm in Kwame's poetry workshop this semester. I'm a Mets fan. I don't know. So I call this poem The Farmhouse, after the painting. It all blurs together, doesn't it? There was that stillborn puppy who left the world wide-eyed, her body warm and open. That last winter of frost-bitten crops we marked with a silence, as dense as the graying weeds of the neighboring abandoned farms. Summers are always dust cloud after dust cloud, and you always wait until I'm asleep to shower off the plains. I think of the puppy often in the spring, and how one turn of wind changes the crop formation and all of our animals' dispositions. Or maybe the baby just knew better. She knew, like the winter wheat, to wait until the world is more hospitable to begin. And while patience hangs in the air like death, the sound of solitude is less forgiving.
Okay, hi, my name is Sybil. I'm a first-year MA student in creative writing with a focus in poetry. And I was inspired by so many different pieces in this, just throughout the museum, but as I started writing, this was the one that I found myself really getting into in the poem. So it's called Body Surfing. The day opens like a rose on fire, waves crashing over jagged rocks. I taste salt on the wind, draw the moment in like a kiss from lips to lungs. My bloodstream rushes bright red and vital, and it is as if I were 17 again. At 17, I did not know the sea is slowly filling with poison from leaking nuclear bombs. I had not yet seen the amber glow of streetlights on wet railroad tracks after trying to drive fast enough to leave this world behind. I had not yet heard the call of death crashing like waves against my skull, or felt the gray plastic chair at my back in the psych ward, tea going cold in my hands as I begged to go home. At 17, I did not know that one day the sea might take us back, waves crashing over our cities and our bodies until we are nothing but rubble and bone at the bottom of the earth. It is as if I am 17 again, and my bones still belong to me. And they don't ache or crack as I start running toward the call of life. I kick up the pale sand of everything that has gone before me. I run until the sea engulfs me like a warm new womb, glittering like a future worth staying for. Thanks.
Hello, I am Shannon Valker. I am a first-year graduate student in the creative writing poetry track here at UNL. I got my chemistry degree here in 2015, and I wanted a career that didn't end in cancer. So here we are. I am the only one with the hubris to choose multiple pictures, so that was great. And Sybil, I'm sorry, you set us up with a beautiful poem, and I'm going to ruin that. It's called Hard at Work. Labor is always bent over their work, consumed by the task at hand, those big, strong hands. Face down, ass up, they don't even notice us gawking. Or maybe they do. Hello there. Workers hardly need to remind us they're always pounding, drilling deep, laying pipe for a living. And when there's smoke, where there's work, there's smoke. And where there's smoke, there's heat, fire, dare I say it, sparks. Can you blame me for seeing this as pornographic? Marx says, when you have to sell everything eventually, you will sell yourself. So workers of the world, unite on the dance floor and sell what your mama gave you, because honey, we are buying. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bianca Swift. I am a poet in Professor Dawes' class. And my poem's on my phone, so ignore my impropriety. This is lines to a poem I cannot write while looking at the mother of us all. 1, not to hammer home the point, but I know this woman. I have this woman's blood in me. I have this woman's blood on me. 2, not to say that at once every black woman is my mother and every black child is my child, but there it is. Or there she is. 3, Queen Nanny. Are you what we mean when we say we come from royalty? 3, are you what was spoiled when they poured the milk in? 4, and what an unoriginal bleeding this is. How cliche of me to want what we have always wanted, to be born of what we are always born of. 5, this is my family. I can see it in the curve of her spine. 6, these is my baby cousins. Their nicknames is Pookie and Puda and Big Mouth and Lil J, and their mama's about to say, 7, don't you dare walk into my house smelling like outside, letting all my cold air out here acting like you ain't got the sense your mama raised you with. 8, how much of family is lineage? How much of lineage is blood? 9, and what a way for Eve to lay claim to us, to bury my family in the notch in her elbow, inside the sinner and next to the sin. 10, but what a beautiful scene we make. 10, and maybe I'm not yours, and you don't have my mother's eyes, but 9, you have my father's veins, my brother's nail beds. I can see it in the way you grip your knee. 8, do you know what is coming? 7, I'm scared of how much you mean to me. Scared I'll open my mouth and only bodies will fall out. 6, how do I say that you are the most joyous thing I have ever seen, and the grief of that is making sediment out of the stone in me. 5, tell me, how do I get you out of me? How do I put more of you in me? 4, I want to swallow this painting whole. I want to have all of it so that you can take none of it. 3, I want to wash me clean, or at least wash me home again. 2, and I've been thinking about Wida, the place where they leave. 2, the place where place left us. 2, and I don't know what I don't know. And I cannot be where I have not been. But 1, I think that maybe you, Queen Nanny, are the place we come back to.
Hi, my name is Carolina Cabata. I'm a second-year graduate student here at UNL. I chose this piece of art. It's Dressing Room Number 1 by Dame Laura Knight. And the poem that I wrote in response is called Work Worth Watching. The mistress insists on watching the seamstress pin and sew this underskirt. It isn't that thrilling. The seamstress is not the type to hold pins in her lips, draw attention to imagine kisses. She holds her needle so its delicate weave isn't visible. Her mistress will see the final drape of the underskirt when it falls from her hips, secure at the waist, and before she's layered the more embellished cover. Is this work worth watching? Sharp and close and hidden. Perhaps for the mistress, it doesn't matter the shape of the dress covering her curved lines. Good tailoring makes fabric seem of a piece. For the mistress, it is the making. Thank you.
My name's Nathaniel Nelson. I'm a first-year PhD student in Professor Dawes' class. This poem is called Indiana Poem until I think of like an actual title for it. As for this work, by a painter born in Indianapolis, painted in the year 2007 at around the time I left Indiana for good, I don't like it much. At least, I don't like it more than I liked Indiana. Like that place, it seems to lend itself a bit too easily to that most brutally obvious way of seeing, allegory. Here we have men in business attire, gathered in deferent postures around a line of 6 industrial machines and taking notes, capitalism's fetishistic excess, etc. And yet, like the miles of corn that threatened to swallow the dying steel town I grew up in, framing it in bounty so absolute it became poverty, it is not completely without its small charms. Notice, for example, the scattershot ribbons of pink, lacing and unlacing the walls, the floor, the men themselves, as if to say not even allegory, nor the sober silence of that most sober of states can be so serious as to preempt light's play. But then there is also the sadness of the machines, which almost seem to sag, elephantine, under the weight of their silence. I worked once with machines not unlike these, which had waited long decades in the quiet half-dark of a warehouse floor. For $9 an hour, for years, I lifted them gently by crane, or scooped them up in the tines of a forklift, and carried them, carefully, down the machine shop floor to the scrap metal bins, and to my station where, with just as much care, I'd open them up and take them apart. Switched on, these machines would hush together twinned electrodes with such gentleness it resembled a kiss, and sparks would fall to dance on the oil-stained floor. Left dormant, as these had been for years, they reminded me of nothing so much as giant, unbeating hearts, whose chambers were rooms for cobwebs, grease, and stale air, and maybe the air's slightest breath, which lifted a cobweb, then released it, every 10 minutes or so, for years upon years. It is perhaps then no small thing that Ian Davis, child of Indianapolis, would paint these 6 achingly quiet machines in postures of holiness. Almost to a one, the men of Midwestern steel towns know that these machines, turbines and furnaces, slide gates, ladle cars, even now falling silent, are their culture's holiest relics, and the last escapes they've kept shored up between themselves and endless corn, and the whispered dialogue between them, asking, what now, and why here? Towering above themselves, they built a heart made perfect in that, when the day's work was done, it could be switched off. Thanks.
All right, this is my image here. It's called Cotton Bowl by Hank Willis Thomas. Oh, I'm Caleb Peterson. Yeah, all right. My poem is called Watching. I touch the turf for the first time. Dad kneels down to show me. Digs his fingers into the torn up rubber, says, look, lets the pieces roll around in my hand. He throws me a touchdown, carries me on his back, singing fight songs as I bounce in his arms. I can feel the drums of his hands as they thud in my feet. Go, big, red, da-da-da-da, go, big, red, da-da-da-da, go, big, red, da-da-da-da-dum. I feel the thrum of my history, a repetitive beat. I feel it weaving, planting itself in my identity. College football is my identity, is spectacle, is prayers for the boys to bring home a win, is a line of scrimmage, is a group of bodies that I watch, is in the stadium where I yell, break his legs as an adult, as a joke, but actually mean, hit him really hard, not so hard, but maybe let him see the stars for a second, make his ears ring, and hear the song of our victory, of our strength in the crowd. The crowd is a violence, is my friends, is crying out to God, is punching the sky, is beating their wives, is shaping their lives, is worshiping the image. The image is a body bent to the ground. The ground is accumulating, like the hits to the head on the O-line, slamming helmet into helmet for the days and the years and the life. This is a land of memory loss. CTE, a movie with Will Smith that I watched to feel good, feel sorry. Sorries in the mouths of the coaches, statements for ESPN. My favorite sport is a harvest, is unpaid labor, is Nebraskan, is the local economy, is my consumption, my catharsis, my communion, is what brings me together with my family on Saturdays with chips and salsa around the TV, is contact with the dirt, is in touch with my roots, is history, is present, is how I avoid my own pain. I just keep watching It goes on, another season. My dad takes me to the Cotton Bowl. I dye my hair red. I don't have to pay a dime. We drive down to Texas, hike up the stands, cheer and laugh and eat nachos, and I love this memory, the feeling of being special. Like inside my chest is one of those balloons that gets released by the fans after the first Husker touchdown. I keep wanting to feel it, stuff of history. I am formed by what I want to watch and what I want to avoid. A thing of the past is not a thing of the past if I can't stop watching it. No more apologies. To watch is to play the game. I want to plant sunflowers in my memories. I want to talk to my dad more. Form traditions that don't take pleasure in watching over black bodies. I could tell him my love for him is scared, is fraught, is digging into a field and watching the dirt fall through my hands. I could tell him I don't know what to look at, that I want to learn to love what I look at, that I don't know how to look him in the eye, that I'm done releasing my pain into other people's bodies, screaming it into a screen, done talking around our lives by rehashing the game. No more sidestepping. This place has shaped me. I've been shaping it. Now I have to live and work in it.
So my name is Elena Wing, and I'm from Los Angeles, California. I'm a first year here, PhD in poetry. And this photograph by Dr. Fernandez really spoke to me and reminded me of home. My parents never owned an in-house washer and dryer, so we spent a lot of time at laundromats, right? And she's also from LA, so this really kind of, reminded me back then. So the orange bench, the discomfort of it, inside the laundromat at the corner of Broadway and Griffin. I spent so much time looking at the clothes turn and turn. We always waited for the loads to pile before my father would load the shopping cart, kept in the outdoor parking lot in the back of the duplex to take the dirtiness of the past week to clean. He claims that he can wash it all, our clothes until he dies. As long as I'm alive, you don't have to labor. We'd all go together. I was always allowed one drink. I chose Coke, always. The coins go down the slot, clicking things into place, revealing the code can, ready to be cracked open. I called my parents today, complaining that what I've always wanted is hard. My father does what he does best, tells me about a wise phrase along the lines of "Các con vượt qua điều khó khăn mới là điều quan trọng." My mother chimes in, "I don't know anything, and I made it, so can you." I would like to be back here, 2826 North Broadway, Lincoln Heights, California, 90031, sitting on the orange bench with them as the washing machines wring out our clothes.
So my name is Anena. I'm a first year PhD. And my poem is inspired by this guy. The artist is Aaron Douglas. The poem is titled Fire Escape. At the gym today, Spotify suggested a song you made me fall in love with, Devinair, To Become. I should have pressed next, but the treadmill was going too fast. Or perhaps I wanted to relive the moments that have become accompaniments to that tune. The occasional rides from Manhattan to Jersey, your car filled with nothing but Ludovico's piano, slow then fast, intense then gentle, gripping all through. How you drummed the steering wheel to each key when the traffic slowed down. How I ran my fingers through your afro when the lights turned red. Why did you let me? How you smiled when I reached for the dashboard to press replay. Why didn't you stop me? The occasional photo shoot on your fire escape, how you cleaned the camera lens like you didn't want to miss a detail, how you turned up debonair as I gazed at the leafy horizon, how you lay on the living room floor, pointing camera at me through the open window, how I posed for your perfect shots until my feet ached. Smile, you said. Beautiful, you said. Stop it, I said. You knew we were not becoming anything, didn't you? You knew the next morning you would wait for me to leave and send that text saying you couldn't do it anymore, didn't you? I was at the gym running like a lunatic today to forget, but an app squeezed you in with a song you called ours. What do you think that made me become? I still love windows, except now I want to walk down the steps without pausing on your fire escape.
Okay, it's my turn. My name is Chinua Ezenwo Heto, and I'm a first year PhD student in Professor Dawes' class. So this is what I responded to. And the artwork is titled Intruders, but my poem, Light Magnets. It has been 5 months now since I tendered the light magnets buried in my throat. 5 months now for the Polaroid memories nursing my worries. It has been years. Hands have been blacked out in our history. Years for our past, asking for the ordinance and recalling. I learned how to wait for twilight to understand really that this is a terrible time to be alive. That there is a sad dent in every love story. I write to you my father's name, Ezenwa. His father's name, Obonna. His father's name, Oheto. His father's name, Ibekwa. His father's name, Obashi, to make you understand the things I've been denied. Dogwood diaries shake off the dust settling on its pages, and somewhere I read that when one prays for long, silence becomes a prayer too. How much silence can heal, can house memories that indict me. Many times I'm left with the choice to think that the best thing about being dead is freedom. But those the dead leave behind aren't free. I keep looking for what it means to mask our wounds, what it takes to know excitements in celebrations.
Hi, my name is Penny Malesso. I'm a third-year MFA student in the art department in photography. And my poem is based off this painting called Pearl Farm 2 by Lisa Sanditz. And it's titled Every Goddamn Thing is a Glimmering Mirror of Divinity. Heaven is a city, glossy pink like inside cheek flesh. We'll shuck the gates. Out gushes everything clean, pearly iridescent pus pooling like motor oil in our dirty little sanctuary. Everything swallowed the crystalline city's bleeding nucleus and spit up utopia in chunks. Plastic skin, bubble wrap frizzen, piss sluice streaming service in DIY Eden. The angels fell to earth, ancient oysters cradled their sweat. Microscopic tektites, little scrying orbs, precious as candy, precious as cell phones. Once the irritant has been implanted, it can take years to shape into a crucifix, a star, an antler, a pair of wings. I too formed a glistening shell around the biotoxic boy inside me, miserable and thriving. The promise of eternity gutted this place, so we saw the glitter smog sunsets and named them gorgeous, borderless. We sink into an artificial lake, sweet endocrine water brimming with futures, contagious shell-cracking salvation.
Since I'm last, I'll thank you all again for coming. This piece is called Wishing for the Farm. It was made by Elizabeth Murray, and my poem is titled after the piece. When we have the farm, it will look from above like no other country. There will be holes blown in the hills around us, or bored by some enormous worm. Impossible to tell how deep the tunnels go. Bottomless fissures will cross the land where tectonic movement will at last have been arrested. We will build bridges over the depths. At 3 corners, red ochre flats and our haygrass fields will meet verdant hill country fed by the dark mist water, undulating in valleys where globules like spilled oil mark the worm's ancient path, tracing from the river to its burrows, the glow fence kept up to light the way. The washed out road in the hollow near Yellow Hill will mark a boundary around where the old world was. The interior where no road now cuts through, only runs around the perimeter of the island until it winds in on itself at the farm, where we will both have come in to wash up from the day's work, leaning over the sink together to scrub our hands before dinner, in the half-light before the children get home, when the house is still, like we used to do before we had the farm. Thank you.
That was pretty good. And these folks are writing really, really tough poems, you know? And I just think, I'm just very impressed by that. And I think it's wonderful how this conversation with art takes place. I think it was Proust. You gotta quote some famous dead white guy when you're in these situations. But I do think it was Proust who in sort of disparaging terms, you know, he's like, I go to the gallery and he's expected to say something absolutely profound and intellectual, and he says, all I do is I look for my relatives in the paintings. And when I see my relatives, I'm moved, and that's what art is. And there's something dismissive about it, but yet there's something quite beautifully true about it, that we find points of intimate connection with art. And when that moves you, you'll keep coming back and staring at this thing, because it will always move you. And the artists don't care, you know, because it's done, you know what I mean? But what happens to us is constantly alive. That's why art stays alive. It has nothing to do with the artist in that sense. And these poems are part of the life of the art. So these are beautiful. I'm very impressed and grateful for these poets to put their work out. It's not easy, you know, to do that. It takes vulnerability and risk, and I thought it was beautifully done. So, thank you all for coming. Those who were compelled to come perforce, I hope it was satisfying. And those who came voluntarily, I hope it was worth it for you. I think there's a receptionist thing downstairs, so continue to look at the gallery, and I think Erin, yes, go ahead.